as part of our ongoing Lighten the Load campaign. Today, we're launching something new. Stand by your men. Now, 1 in 8 men in England are battling mental health problems, and suicide remains the #1 cause of death in men aged between 20 and 49. So to help us launch the campaign, Nadia's husband, Mark, joins us today.
And he's very, very happy about it.
He's very happy. And it's so sweet because we talk about you all the time, Mark.
I know.
I can't believe this is your first time actually on the show.
I know. I just dread to think what you know.
I know. I mean, there's stuff that just can't leave the air, Mark.
I know. It's terrible.
Like we said, it's a new campaign, one that we feel very, very kind of privileged to have the platform to talk about, Mark. And I know you two are so brilliant because you are very honest all of the time about your relationship and any kind of struggles that you've had. And I think that resonates with people, and it's what we need to do now. We need to talk.
Well, that's why we were both, even though this is like going to the dentist for Mark, he was really keen to do it because, I mean, our Lighten the Load campaign, we're all so enormously proud of that, and the fact that we're going to continue now on this, which is such a vital thing to talk about, because we are still so far back in being able to really allow men, I think, to talk about their own struggles. We've all got a kind of fear around it. And so Mark and I are professional oversharers, that's what we do. And we did a couple of years back, didn't we? We'd started to talk on our YouTube channel about mental health and about Mark's depression. And it really struck me and stayed with me how many people, after we put our first film out, came up and went, "Oh, that was so brave of you both. That was so brave." And I thought, why? Have you changed the way you think about us? Why was it brave? Why is it so awful?
Yeah.
And we did actually, at that point, talk about maybe we shouldn't talk about this anymore. And then we decided, well, no, we will. Because if people still think it's the most brave thing you can do, that means people are still very judgmental of it. And that doesn't help anyone who's struggling. So, yeah.
And yes. How do you feel about it now, Mark? Do you feel very much in a place where actually being able to talk about it is in itself a form of therapy, I guess?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think talking about it is the only way you can sort of normalise it, you know, sort of make it a part of everyday conversation, that you can see that people, we're not sort of sitting in a corner, sort of dribbling and drooling like idiots. You know,
because people will say, Mark doesn't look like he's depressed.
Yeah. I mean, I get that all the time. I mean, when I discovered I was didn't discover I was an alcoholic, but when I sort of car crashed my life through addiction and what have you, I mean, a number of people didn't realise I had such a problem. So, you know, half of the stress with mental health is hiding it. It's concealing it. And concealing it, I think, is where addiction comes in, because people can conceal it through drink, through drugs, through all sorts of compulsive behaviour. So, yeah, I think when we talked about it and when we do talk about it, it is like sharing. It's like being in a group, and hopefully someone somewhere might find something that connects with them, and then they can sort of think, you know...
But you talk about the alcohol addiction, Mark, and it wasn't until after you dealt with that you discovered that you weren't feeling like you thought you were going to feel having dealt with it. And that was when the discovery of depression came about.
I mean, I think the diagnosis was sort of strictly about 4 years ago, wasn't it? 4 years ago. I mean, it's funny because, you know, when you live a life of excess and you live a life of... I mean, I lived a life of excess, but at the same time I was functioning in the world. So, as I say, friends didn't realise that I was spiralling out of control in my private life. And so they were surprised.
Because your career was going straight to strength. When Mark went into rehab, everyone was like, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I mean, you know, so there were stages of, like, I was done for drink driving. When you phone your wife from a cell, you know, you're not thinking about depression. You're thinking about my behaviour. My behaviour's wrong. I've done something excessive. I've done something bad. And then as you move through life, you sort of remove away all of those distractions and all of those codependencies, if you like, and the things that you're using. And then suddenly you're left with yourself, and you think, hang on a minute, I don't feel any better. You know, you feel as vulnerable, you feel as raw, you feel as depressed and as stressed and as anxious.
Because I think you felt once you'd got sober 15 years now, that you would be, that the malaise would lift, didn't you? We thought that was only connected. But, of course, we've learnt since that so many people that drink or use stuff actually had depression before, and that's how they medicated. And so when Mark got the diagnosis, we were almost relieved, weren't we?
Well, we were relieved, but at the same time I felt depressed, like being told I was depressed. Because it's kind of like, as soon as you... No, you do, because as soon as you have a sort of tag, it's like you say, I'm an alcoholic. People think, oh, you're a nutter, you're this, you're that. You say you're depressed, and people think...
That's all you are.
Right, that's all you are. You know, you're nothing other than what that term is.
Do you think that is more... I don't know if there's a difference, but me and the girls were talking earlier. if I felt really low and I came into work,
Yeah.
the first thing I would do is get together with the girls and say, I'm really struggling
Absolutely.
today. I don't know of many men who feel that they can do that. And do you think that that's perhaps why, you know, so many men are living with these...
I'd like to think my story is a bit of a cautionary tale, because the sort of soberer I've got and the more I've come to terms with being, you know, for want of a better expression, depressed, my male circle of friends has diminished and diminished and diminished. It's really hard to connect with other men. It's really hard. And to that
Without
extent,
a pint?
Well, without a pint or without banter. You know, it's kind of like you'll open up about saying, don't be stupid, of course it's not, you know, blah, 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 and it's, this is because of the... And there's always a sort of way of laughing your way out of it, and you're left I mean, I've used the phrase before, you know, you can be on the terraces of a football match and you're sort of watching the match and you're with your friends, but actually you're totally on your own. Because you're going to go to the bar afterwards, you're all going to be sort of drinking and what have you, but there's absolutely no real connection. And that's not because no one cares, it's because we don't have the language, or we're worried that if we step outside of that male world, everyone's going to judge us.
We were talking about this yesterday in the kitchen, actually, and I was saying to Mark, but thank God it's not the same for the younger generation. And Maddie was sat there, 17 now, and she went, oh, it is, Mum.
Yeah.
If a boy starts, she gets really frustrated within her group and they say, I can't say the word that they say, but, you know, if a boy starts to talk about his feelings, everyone's like, oh, come on, man up. And, you know, if we're talking about why we've got this crisis in this country, it's most likely...
Yeah, biggest cause of death.
Yeah.
Between 20 and 49.
We've got to question that language that we use with men that we don't use with women. Can you imagine us saying, if we came in and said, I'm really struggling and feeling overwhelmed, we went, oh, pull yourself together, be a woman. I mean, that's what a lot of men are having to deal with all the time, and that's why there's so much
what is the answer
misunderstanding.
then, Mark? Not the answer,
God.
but where do you think the best place is to start? Because...
Well, I mean, the other thing I'd say, I don't think there's just kind of like a resistance between men to open up. I think we talk a lot about sexism. I have 4 daughters. We talk about the sexist world and all that kind of stuff. But I think there's a lot of reverse sexism towards men from women. I think a lot of women, you know, if I open up about stuff, or have opened up about stuff to female colleagues in the past, you can see there's a sense sometimes within women that they want their men not to be feeling this stuff, not necessarily because they don't care, because it's too dangerous. It could overwhelm them all. It could, you know, if I go there. So I think there's an element of being able to break it down on both sides so that men feel comfortable just using the language. I mean, I think...
But how does somebody ask somebody that they think is depressed? If there's a woman watching now and she's worried about her husband, what's the big mistake you can make?
Don't tackle it in a row.
You might be referring to me there.
Yeah.
Have I ever done that? Yeah.
Yeah, last night was... No. I mean, timing is key.
Yeah, because that's the one moment when you don't get sense or a level playing. It's heated. It has to be away from...
And usually it's an argument that kind of gives rise to you thinking there's a major problem here. So usually it'll be within that argumentative situation that something will fly, something will be said, and that... But, you know, and a lot of language about, you know, grow some balls and all that kind of stuff and man up and, you know, it's just that language is hardwired in at a young age. But in terms of practical advice, I was asked this earlier, I mean, it's very hard. I think seeing people talking about it and not being afraid about it and you know, blokes saying, you know... I think if you've got a group of male friends as a man, take one of them aside for a private moment doing something else other than the kind of collective, going to the pub, going to a football match, whatever it is. You know, do something like that. But
and I would say if you're the partner and you're worried about your man and you don't know how to do it, I would suggest sometimes it helps just to write it down. And if you start, look, I really love you. I feel that you might be really sad and it's like overwhelming or something like that, so that you can open that dialogue, because men do find it so hard to admit it, to ask for help.
Just to start the conversation amongst us.
Just
Just that one opening of...
Absolutely.
Just that start. Mark, honestly, I'm so pleased you're able to come on today, because it makes such a difference, and I couldn't have thought of a better way to launch this campaign, because I love how honest both of you are about all of this. You're just great. I know. It is. It's OK, you say.
Thank you.
Look, like we say, it is the beginning of a new campaign on the programme, and if you have indeed been affected by anything we've just been talking about, there's lots of information and helplines on our website as well. Stand by your men. Let's get talking and make it OK to not be OK.